I should introduce myself. My name is John Kirk. I'm a writer and reviewer for popmythology.com and trekcore.com and Back Issue, and I've got the great honor of being your moderator tonight. So, before we begin, Bob, I believe that I have a few trivia facts about you that people might not know about.
Oh my God, so... twin variations.
Double your pleasure.
That's clout. Listen to this.
I feel refreshed already. So you attended Yale, and ironically, you actually were pre-med.
Yes. I wanted to be a doctor. That was my childhood ambition. I probably was thinking about being a pediatrician. I think because I remembered my own childhood baby doctor, and he was a very impressive guy. So I went off to Yale. I had taken advanced biology, I guess, in high school, and I was a biology major for about a year and a half, but I would try to do plays at the same time, which was very hard to do because we had those lengthy labs at the end of the day. And then you went straight to rehearsal and you had no time to study, ever. So I wasn't going to make it to med school and do theater as much as I wanted to. So I was in a kind of a dilemma because theater had always been my hobby. And then I was in a production at Yale that kind of got a lot of attention, and that's what turned my head around. A young graduate of the Yale School of Music who's gone on to be a very successful conductor, John Mosseri, had worked with Leonard Bernstein conducting, I guess, the choir or the choral work for a revival of the opera Carmen. And he said to Mr. Bernstein, I think they screwed up Leonard Bernstein wrote a show called The Mass. And it opened the Kennedy Center in Washington in like 1970. So this young upstart conductor in his 20s says, I think they screwed up your show, Maestro. I'd like to try it, do it at Yale. And he gave him the first non-professional rights to the show. And Bernstein liked our production so much, he took us to Vienna. So at 19 years old, I went off to Vienna to perform this, I guess, in the spring after my second year at Yale. But when we did it at Yale, Bernstein, who called me the great Picardo, he was making fun of the great Caruso, which is a movie. Believe me, my singing voice nowhere deserves being called the great Picardo. But he said, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I'm going to be a doctor. He said, oh, I'm surprised to hear that. I thought you'd want to be a performer. You have such great natural energy on stage, not phony Broadway energy. And I said to him, would you tell my mother? So at the opening night party, Leonard Bernstein told my mother. He thought I would have showed this. So that's what sprung me out of pre-med, folks.
But you did actually go on and do some further music. You have a CD with a parody album, and
yes,
singers we've seen on the episode.
I have done numerous CDs, probably more than you wanted me to do. But song parodies, writing, what's it called? When you steal lyrics, felking. Felking? You got to be careful because there's another word that you don't want to say. And I always did this before. What is it called? Filking. How embarrassing for me. Anyway, yes, where you write funny lyrics to it. So that's always been a hobby. And I've done some singing. I just did on the Star Trek cruise. You guys hear about the Star Trek cruise? Yeah. I did my first sort of old style cruise show where you do comedy patter and you sing songs. Because I have a lifelong friend who performs on cruise ships all the time. So when I went to the cruise company and I said, I don't think you have any other Star Trek celebrities who have a good friend who does this all the time. I said, why don't we write a show for you? And we did, and it went over really, really, really well. So well that they booked us for the next 2 cruises. So if you ever go on a Star Trek cruise, you'll see me do some more singing, quite a bit, actually. I think we opened the show with the lyrics to the Star Trek theme. Did you know the Star Trek theme has lyrics? And you've probably never heard them, and you know why? Because they stink. Really, really terrible. Gene Roddenberry wrote the lyrics just to get half the royalties, knowing that they would never be heard. But anyway, I opened by singing the lyrics to the original Star Trek theme.
So take us back to your audition for the Doctor. How did that go down?
I was doing a play at the time at a very prestigious theater in downtown Los Angeles called the Mark Taper Forum. I'd always wanted to work there, and I spent, because early in my career I did 2 leads on Broadway, so I was fairly accomplished when I first came to LA in theater, and I did work at a number of the theaters around LA, but I never worked at the Mark Taper, so I finally got a job there the summer of 1995. And we're just about to open, and I am curiously playing a doctor with a terrible bedside manner. In a play, what was the play called? Waiting Room. And I think we were in Tech Week. In Tech Week, the rehearsal days are long because you're setting all the lights and all of the actors are getting used to the set, all these things. And on one of my tech days, my agent had sent me the script for Voyager and said, "Can you do an audition during your lunch break?" And I said, "Well, I can't do this pilot because I'm performing." And he said, "Don't tell them that." So agents are great, teaching you how to lie. So I went and auditioned, but when I read the script, actually I'd gotten the script a couple days before, and I said to him, "I don't know if I can do it," but I read the script. And I ended up going on my meal break on a 12-hour workday. We get a 2-hour break, and we work 5 hours, get a 2-hour break, and come back for 5 more hours. So that's a hard thing to do anyway. A lot of the actors take naps and whatever. So I ran off and did the audition. But before I said yes to the audition, I had read just the lines for the Doctor's character, and it said, "A computer program of the Doctor," a hologram who was a computer program of the Doctor, colorless, humorless. Does that sound like a bucket of fun for you? Literally, there were 9 lines, and the lines weren't funny. And I kept thinking, a hologram, how does he grab medical instruments? Don't they go through his hands? I didn't understand enough about, the holodeck, that excuse they have for objects to feel real on the holodeck because because you're converting matter into energy and whatever. So I threw it on the floor and said, "They're never going to put me in a Star Trek series." And I called a friend of mine, an actress who was auditioning for Janeway, and she guest starred. We were good friends. She was in China Beach with me. Her name is Megan Gallagher. And Megan had been in Deep Space Nine at that point, I think twice. She said, "Oh, the writing is great. You have to read the script." And she said, "There's another character called Neelix that looks like fun." So I read Neelix and I thought it was delightful. And I had my agent call and say he doesn't want to read for the Doctor, he wants to read for this Neelix character. Meanwhile, I understand that Neelix is in makeup, but I think it's going to be little rubber ear tips like the Spock guy. And when you ask them, during a Star Trek series, when your agent asks, "How long will the makeup process take?" they say, "We'll get back to you." And when they call back, they say, "More than 15 minutes. Which is true, 3.5 hours is more than 15 minutes. Every day for 7 years. But I went and tested for Neelix. I made my peace with being buried in makeup, and I went and tested. I didn't know my competition was Ethan Phillips, who's a dear old friend of mine. I just went, they had a special time I think they arranged for me, and I read it. They loved me as Neelix, and I tested for Neelix. And I almost got that part, and I thank God. The story I heard is actually that the producers wanted me in the network. They had the studio and the network. The producers of the show were leaning toward me and the network and the new Paramount Television. Because when you audition, there's 18 people in the room. You know what they all do. You got the 4 producers of Star Trek, and then you have all these studio people and the new United Paramount Network, which is since gone. See, there's a lot of people in the room. Anyway, I didn't get the part, and I thought, okay, it wasn't meant to be. But then they called back. I called my agent and said, we really would love to see him read for the part we were originally asked for, the doctor. And I literally said to my agent, I don't get the joke, but I'll go in and try. So I went in, and I knew they were looking for someone funny. I heard that they'd seen 900 actors, from Howard Hesseman on, they'd seen